Hello, and thank you for taking time to view our presentation. My name is Stephen Beck, and I will be opening for our operations management team that includes Heike Hotnan, Chase Traylor, Levi Wallace, and Ethan Hickey. The topic of our presentation is providing a safe work environment to retain and attract new employees in the restaurant industry during the COVID 19 pandemic. Throughout the pandemic, the restaurant industry has been one of the hardest hit industries, primarily due to forced shutdowns by government agencies, leaving little room for operators to keep the doors open in an industry where profit margins are notoriously slim for the average small business structured location. When companies are faced with dire circumstances that force massive changes to how operations take place, a new outlook of the business model must take place. Organizational behavior theory is defined as the systematic study and application of knowledge about how individuals and groups act within the organizations where they work. The study of organizational behavior theory includes areas of research dedicated to improving job performance, increasing job satisfaction, promoting innovation, and encouraging leadership as a foundation of corporate human resource. Each has its own recommended actions, such as reorganizing groups, modifying compensation structures, or changing methods of performance evaluation. One of the most important things to remember when thinking of or discussing organizational behavior is that it often pertains to soft skills and how people feel and care about their experiences within an organization or work environment. In any organization or business, people are the most valuable asset and the most critical component to get right when thinking of how to improve or change a business structure or model. Changing processes that impact the human element can be the most difficult element that management faces due to the fact that all individuals feel differently about workplace dynamics due to their own life experiences. The process of navigating this is ever changing. When the COVID 19 pandemic began in early 2020, it was an event that was unparalleled in modern history and forced the world to take dramatic measures to try and halt the spread. Unfortunately, one of those measures was to issue mandates that closed virtually every restaurant, bar, and food service business. The industry was forced to make dramatic shifts in the way business was conducted, including how to support and manage employees. Now let's hear from Heike on how several organizational behavior theories played into the restaurant business model.
During the COVID-19 pandemic, the restaurant industry was one of the hardest hit industries due to the high levels of employee customer interaction necessary in order to operate. Almost all restaurants lost 100% of their dine in business, and after lockdown, needed to transition to online orders and deliveries for their main source of business. So, how can restaurants address employees' needs post lockdown and during the COVID 19 pandemic? Well, we think one of the main ways restaurants can stay operational and keep employees safe is by following the ERG theory developed by Clayton Alderfer, which you can see in the middle of this slide. It's a slightly adjusted theory from Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs basically states that every human has needs that are hierarchically ranked, starting with physiological and safety needs, going all the way to self actualization. Self actualization is defined as the desire to acquire new skills, take on new challenges, and behave in a way that will lead to the attainment of one's life goals, according to the article Need Based Theories of Motivation, which you can see on the bottom left of this slide, in the section titled Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs. Clayton Alderfer's ERG theory is related to Maslow's, but with a few tweaks. These tweaks are just the categorization of the hierarchical levels into three groups called existence, relatedness, and growth. The main difference is that the ERG theory has subgroups, the different hierarchical levels in Maslow's, that all play into the work environment and employees' needs all at once. So, this idea is best stated by the author of the article mentioned before called Need Based Theories of Motivation. The author states the implication of this theory is that we need to recognize the multiple needs that may be driving individuals at a given point to understand their behavior and properly motivate them. Um, what I really like about this theory is that it applies to any work environment, but most specifically in the restaurant industry during COVID-19. You have to look at employees' needs uh, in a scenario where there's multiple environmental factors playing at once. And ultimately, that will help meet employee retention. So, looking at a simplistic example that would relate to ERG theory, if an employee doesn't have their basic needs, like safety, being met in the workplace, then instead of performing a good work job or a good work day, they will be pursuing a safe environment. So during COVID-19, the main safety threat to employees is each other and the customers, since COVID-19 itself is ultimately spread through human interaction. So addressing COVID-19 related issues in the workplace would be the most effective way to attract and retain employees, obviously, but the most effective way to do so is by using the ERG theory and Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs and looking at the different levels of employee needs and addressing concerns where they need to be met.
Within the workplace, there are multiple factors that cause employees to be dissatisfied with their job or role at an establishment. The two biggest factors that we found were a disconnect or tension between supervisors and employees and health concerns within the workplace. In almost any workplace, wherever you look, you will be able to find some form of internal tension. Supervisors within the workplace can be one of the main reasons that lead employees to either quit or remain at their current job. A survey conducted by Bernardine van Gramberg, a professor at Swinburne University of Technology, studied the relationship between employee voice and intention to quit. It found that 21% of respondents reported that their conflict was fully resolved. Just less than half reported that it was partly resolved, and about a third reported the conflict was not resolved at all. These partly resolved or completely unresolved conflicts cause employees to be dissatisfied, which often leads to the eventual loss of the employee. A workplace in which there is disconnect and tension between supervisors and employees often has poor employee retention and causes employees to feel anxious while working. Health concerns within the workplace is another major dissatisfier that can lead to poor employee retention. Workers in the restaurant industry in particular often will end up leaving their job due to health concerns or safety hazards within the workplace. Furthermore, according to a report published by One Fair Wage and the UC Berkeley Food Labor Research Center in May of 2021, stated that 53% of workers in the restaurant industry have considered leaving their jobs since the pandemic started, with low wages and tips, safety concerns, and harassment from customers as their primary reasons provided by workers. With this being said, maintaining a safe workplace is absolutely vital in reducing the voluntary employee turnover rate for an establishment. Now, let's get into solutions for some of these common workplace concerns. The two biggest solutions we found were establishing a COVID conscious workspace and providing emotional intelligence training for managers and supervisors. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot has changed for the restaurant industry. Creating a COVID conscious workspace has been a top priority for many businesses as we all adapt to the changes that COVID has presented. Many restaurants have employed a pre-screening process that consists of taking your temperature, as well as assessing any possible symptoms you may have prior to starting work. Furthermore, they sanitize all work surfaces, especially those which are considered high-touch surfaces, and this has been key to maintaining safety. Once implemented, these changes will help to increase job security for all employees and help to ensure that employees feel safe while they're doing their job. COVID-19 has created a stressful environment for everyone, especially restaurant industry workers. With this being said, emotionally intelligent managers and supervisors within restaurants are vital for employee retention and improved job security. Emotionally intelligent managers are able to connect with workers on a psychologically emotional level, allowing them to form a more personal connection with employees, which can lead to positive outcomes even during challenging times. With emotionally intelligent supervisors, the workspace would feel much more comfortable and relaxed as the relationship between supervisor and employee is more meaningful. Furthermore, an article published in the Journal of Business Logistics that looked at positive influence of emotional intelligence in law firms stated that the employee of a 3PL firm noted specifically that emotional intelligence of both supervisors and frontline employees was a selling point to potential customers. This helps to show that emotional intelligence training can help not only with retention, but also with attraction.
During times of significant economic downturns, like we saw with the COVID-19 pandemic, many businesses had to cut costs in order to survive. For most, if not all businesses, labor is the largest portion of costs. Many companies, when presented with the problems of COVID-19, which included lower consumer spending and lockdown policies, laid off much of their workforce. With the Federal Reserve and congressional policies in regards to COVID-19, consumer spending began to rise dramatically. The food industry, specifically restaurants, were impacted profoundly. As consumers began to consider eating out again, many restaurants were faced with a new problem: worker shortages. The attraction of employees is especially difficult, as many employees that were laid off at the onset of the pandemic were not re entering the workforce or choosing jobs in the restaurant industry. The slide shows a graph of job openings in the restaurant industry, with the red arrow indicating the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as to the right of the arrow the corresponding variant waves that were met with more government lockdowns. Worker shortages are not only leading to headaches for restaurant owners, but it is also impacting people looking to eat, as they will not receive the same level of service that they did pre pandemic, simply because restaurants do not have staff to provide the same level of service. So, why are employees not re entering the workforce or choosing jobs in the restaurant industry? We can solve these issues by addressing the root cause, as explained by Herzberg's motivation two-factor theory. Improving upon worker dissatisfiers, especially wages in this case, can attempt to make restaurants an attractive place to work. The historically low wages of the food industry, usually minimum wage, became much less attractive when compared to the unemployment benefits offered during the pandemic. As someone who was laid off at the onset of COVID, I can attest to reports that people on unemployment were making substantially more than working full time. Restaurant owners, Restaurant owners must address wage issues if they wish to fully staff their restaurants. As presented in earlier slides, improving upon workplace concerns, especially safety, will help to address worker shortages. In an article titled U.S. Restaurant Workers Leave Industry Over COVID, the author, Michael Sonato, states that workers in the restaurant industry were among the highest sector of workers who died of coronavirus during the pandemic. Workers may not feel safe when working during the pandemic. So instituting the safer workplace policies addressed earlier can provide workers with the same peace of mind that they will not fall victim to COVID-19 and can feel safe to re-enter the workforce. Overall, the food industry is facing a dire problem in that of worker shortages and must address them immediately to be able to provide the quality of service that consumers expect.
With that being said, I wanted to look back at a few of our main points that we were talked about in our presentation. Um, First off, by talking about the challenges imposed from the pandemic and the solutions we came up with. The first issue that we listed was refining the business model, basically in with the new and out with the old. So business owners have to recognize that dining is impossible, so they have to digitalize their operations. For example, by doing online orders and delivery to reduce the risk of spreading COVID. Another challenge that the service industry has faced is workforce shortages. People aren't willing to work in an environment where they don't feel safe because of the virus. And in addition, they weren't getting high enough wages considering the risk over benefit. Also, there were plenty of relief bills set in place by government officials to compensate these people.
We came up with a solution with how managers could provide perks like work-life balance and opportunities for career advancement for all employees and create a better relationship between the two. The last issue that we listed was service that the service industry faced is workplace concerns like creating a COVID conscious space and the emotional status of their employees. Both these factors can negatively impact the internal operations of the business, and we came up with a couple solutions. So the main focus is to create a goal that implements a pleasant workplace for the employees. This will help boost their emotional status and motivate them to work through the challenging times. And the managers have to make their employees feel comfortable and relaxed in the workplace. We also talked about the Herzberg theory earlier, and others listed as well that will help create a safe and a motivational environment where the employees can work efficiently. Therefore, employers only need to ensure that their employees are motivated and satisfied during the hard times caused by the pandemic. I found a quote from Brian Cornell, the CEO of Target. He said, "It's safe to say that sitting here today, America is largely out of business, as many industries have idle capacity. As consumers are staying at home, working from home, schools are closed. It's a very unique environment that none of us seen before. There is no playbook for how to react in this environment. We are writing the script each and every day." Basically, I chose this quote because it correlates with how the service industry had to adapt and change its ways of operations to survive the pandemic. In the end, this everlasting virus has posed numerous challenges like the ones we listed earlier. Therefore, restaurants have been able to survive because of new restaurant concepts, technologies, and organizational structures. And in addition, the Herzberg motivation theory can be implemented and followed to solve most of those issues that we talked about and maybe other ones. So this raises the question of how will the service industry look like in the future? Nothing is set in stone, but we do know that businesses need to meet the needs and wants of workers. Thank you for your time and listening.